Chapter 38. About the Attributes of the Tao. Those who possessed in highest degree the attributes of the Tao did not seek to show them, and therefore they possessed them in fullest measure. Those who possessed in a lower degree those attributes sought how not to lose them, and therefore they did not possess them in the fullest measure. Those who possessed in the highest degree those attributes did nothing with a purpose, and had no need to do anything. Those who possessed them in a lower degree were always doing, and had need to be so doing. Those who possessed the highest benevolence were always seeking to carry it out, and had no need to be doing so. Those who possessed the highest righteousness were always seeking to carry it out, and had need to be so doing. Those who possessed the highest sense of propriety were always seeking to show it, and when men did not respond to it, they bared the arm and marched up to them. Thus it was that when the Tao was lost, its attributes appeared. When its attributes were lost, benevolence appeared. When benevolence was lost, righteousness appeared. And when righteousness was lost, the proprieties appeared. Now propriety is the attenuated form of leal-heartedness and good faith, and is also the commencement of disorder. Swift apprehension is only a flower of the Tao, and is the beginning of stupidity. Thus it is that the great man abides by what is solid, and eschews what is flimsy, dwells with the fruit and not with the flower. It is thus that he puts away the one and makes choice of the other. Superior virtue is unvirtue. Therefore, it has virtue. Inferior virtue never loses sight of virtue. Therefore, it has no virtue. Superior virtue is non-assertion, and without pretension. Inferior virtue asserts and makes pretensions. Superior benevolence acts, but makes no pretensions. Superior justice acts and makes pretensions. Superior propriety acts, and when no one responds to it, it stretches its arm and enforces its rules. Thus one loses reason, and then virtue appears. One loses virtue, and then benevolence appears. One loses benevolence, and then justice appears. One loses justice, and then propriety appears. The rules of propriety are the semblance of loyalty and faith, and the beginning of disorder. Traditionalism is the flower of reason, but of ignorance the beginning. Therefore, a great organizer abides by the solid, and dwells not in the external. He abides in the fruit, and dwells not in the flower. Therefore, he discards the latter, and chooses the former. Essential de makes no show of virtue, and therefore it is really virtuous. Inferior virtue never loses sight of itself, and therefore it is no longer virtue. Essential virtue is characterized by lack of self-assertion, wu-wei, and therefore is unpretentious. Inferior virtue is acting a part, and thereby is only pretense. Superior benevolence, in a way, is acting, but does not thereby become pretentious. Excessive righteousness is acting, and does thereby become pretentious. Excessive propriety is acting, but where no one responds to it, it stretches its arm and enforces obedience. Therefore, when one loses Tao, there is still de. One may lose de, and benevolence remains. One may forsake benevolence and still hold to righteousness. One may lose righteousness, and propriety remains. Propriety alone reduces loyalty and good faith to a shadow, and it is the beginning of disorder. Tradition is the mere flower of the Tao, and had its origin in ignorance. Therefore the great man of affairs conforms to the spirit, and not to external appearance. He goes on to fruitage, and does not rest in the show of blossom. He avoids mere propriety, and practices true benevolence. So we begin by contrasting two approaches to virtue. The virtue that is effortlessly embodied, and the virtue that is diligently pursued. Those who possess the highest degree of virtue do not seek to flaunt it. Instead, their virtue naturally emanates from their being. Conversely, those who possess virtue to a lesser extent are often preoccupied with maintaining it, leading to a superficial manifestation of virtue. The chapter highlights the concept of wu wei, the art of non-action, in relation to virtue. Those who possess virtue in its highest form don't actively strive to demonstrate it. Rather, their actions flow spontaneously from their inner state of virtue. And in contrast, those who possess virtue to a lesser degree are often caught up in constant activity, seeking to prove their virtue through external deeds, always expecting kudos for a job well done. The passage also explores the attributes of benevolence and righteousness. Those who embody true benevolence naturally express it in their actions without the need for conscious effort. And similarly, those who uphold righteousness do so effortlessly, allowing their virtuous nature to guide their conduct. At the same time, Lao Tzu warns against the dangers of misplaced propriety and swift apprehension. Propriety, when superficial and disconnected from genuine sincerity, can lead to disorder and confusion. Likewise, quick intellectual understanding, divorced from deeper wisdom, can lead to folly and ignorance. So, in short, the chapter emphasizes the importance of embodying virtue in its most authentic and effortless form. The sage abides by what is solid and substantial, tossing aside superficiality and pretense. By dwelling in the essence rather than the appearance of virtue, one aligns oneself with the natural flow of the Tao, transcending the limitations of mere superficiality and embracing the profound depths of genuine virtue without expending any effort whatsoever.